Welcome, everyone, to the last Experts Exchange Tech News podcast of 2012. My name's Gary, and closing out the year with me is my faithful co-host, Jen.
Hey, guys.
We'll be taking a hiatus for the holidays, but we'll be back in January with a podcast featuring a few different guest hosts in Jen's absence. Each week on the EE Tech News podcast, we take a look at what's new in the world of technology, chat with an expert or two from the site, and offer a few tips and tricks. Our guest this week is former EE staffer Megan Farrell. Megan has been deeply involved in our water well charity drives over the years, and she's going to talk a little bit about her trip to Ethiopia, where she visited some of the villages where Experts Exchange built new wells.
I think we had her on previously, probably about a year ago.
Yeah, when we did the last charity drive, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was right after her Ethiopia.
That was right. Yeah, we had her on about a year ago, right after she got back from Ethiopia. She actually made a trip over there to see the wells that we had built. And this time, she is actually coming back from hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. So we're talking to her a little bit about that. But she also shared some more of her memories from her trip to Ethiopia and some things that she hadn't shared with us on the podcast before. And it's just interesting to hear how much of an impact our community has made over there in Ethiopia in bringing sustainable, clean water to the folks over there.
And this week, we have gone live with our most recent charity drive, where experts can donate T-shirts, T-shirt ranks to contribute to another water well being built in Ethiopia, correct?
Yes, experts can donate T-shirts, or you can go directly to, if you're not an expert on the site but you still want to make an impact, you can go directly to waterrun.org and make a donation. And in the memo line on the donation page, just write Experts Exchange. And Randy Redberg, our CEO, will match 100% of the donations made through January 31st.
Obviously, we're going to talk about this a little bit more with Megan. It's a great organization, Water Run, that we're working with. But first, let's talk a little bit about the latest tech news.
You have some tech news this week.
I do have some tech news. One of the things that I think is probably most fascinating, I was reading last night, IBM's 5 and 5 list. Have you heard of this before, Jen?
I haven't. What is it?
Every year, IBM puts out a list of the 5 innovations that they think will change our lives in the next 5 years. And this year, they specifically, it's kind of 5 and 5 and 5. They went with the 5 senses.
Interesting.
So what they've, if you go to their website, they've sat down with a number of different scientists and technologists, and they're talking about how technology is going to begin to incorporate more of the 5 senses. So specifically, we're talking about cognitive computing, the question of how do we get computers to behave and think and interact like humans. I mean, we'd like to think that Google is smart, but it can't smell something.
Although if it could, I'm guessing it would smell the lovely fumes that wafted through our office after everyone has come back from a rousing game of basketball.
Mm-hmm. Sweaty. In the 5 and 5 piece, a couple of things that they talked about were computers and smartphones in the next 5 years. They think we'll be able to have the ability to look at images and understand them, which we're kind of getting to already with Google goggles and that kind of a thing.
Well, and facial recognition.
Right. So that's already, we're kind of on the edge of looking at images. But have a sense of taste and smell, which we talked about a little bit here. And then one that I thought was really interesting was allow you to have a sense of touch. So you could touch your smartphone, you could touch an item and feel the texture. So what they had, this woman was talking about, if you had like a sweater, for example, you're shopping for a sweater, that they could use the variations in the vibrations of the smartphone so that when you touch it, you would feel the texture, like a simulation of what the texture of that fabric feels like.
I have to say that as far as shopping is concerned, I would be very interested in a smartphone that could do that, because there have been a number of times whenever I've been wanting to purchase something online and looked at the fabric makeup of the garment and thought, I don't know if I want this because I don't think it's going to feel very good. So I actually would be very interested in that, but that begs the question of how true to the actual texture the smartphone would be.
It's hard to imagine something simulating the feeling of touch. I mean, if you're touching like a scratchy wool sweater, Like how do you? There's no way to accurately simulate that. I mean, maybe this is me just being a Luddite here, but I just don't understand how that would even work.
Yeah, I don't either, but I would be interested in testing out that technology. So if you need a beta tester,
you're ready to touch some sweaters.
They're saying that these technologies have yet to be developed, but these are things that they could foresee coming in the near future.
This is their predictions of what they think will happen in the next 5 years. So they can do some crazy crap. You on the one end, you have looking at images and understanding them, which is a fairly easy prediction to make for the next year or so. But touching sweaters, that's year 5.
Think about the implications that some of this stuff could have for people who are disabled or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that that's really cool.
I think that's been one of the most exciting things as we've talked about, like Google Hangouts and some of the other tools that really give people who are either on bed rest or forced to stay in their home or disabled, give them an opportunity to experience the world in a way that they've never been able to experience before.
Yeah. I mean, I even think on a very basic level. So my parents for Christmas are getting me an iPhone 5 because they just got iPhone 5s and they want to be able to FaceTime with their new grandson in a couple weeks. And I just think years ago, we never would have been able to fathom the ability for people on the other side of the country to be able to see me through this little handheld device.
Yeah. And it's important to remember the good things about technology, because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the not so good things.
Yes, in the not so good things, like let's talk about Instagram, which on the surface is a good thing, correct?
The Microsoft Surface.
I don't think they have an app for that on the Microsoft Surface yet. Instagram recently came out with some new privacy policy terminology that basically said that because their service is supported by ad revenue, they will use your photos to advertise and promote other venues or other advertisers to other people. So, for instance, this article that I read was in The Atlantic, and the example that the author of the article gave was like, if you're in Vegas at a hotel, say you're at the Palms in Vegas, and you take a picture out by the pool and you Instagram it, Instagram could then grab your location data, because they would have that even if you didn't tag the photo as like Palms Vegas. They could grab your location data and use it in an ad to serve to one of your Facebook friends or another one of your Instagram friends to get them to want to come to the Palms in Vegas. They could use it in an ad for the Palms Vegas.
I could see some people actually being kind of excited about that.
I think so too. And the guy who wrote this article was clearly enraged, and other Instagram power users are clearly enraged over this. I don't think we should be alarmed by this at all, because this is what we're signing up for whenever we sign up to use social media. But the guy who wrote the Atlantic article did bring up sort of a greater issue, looking at it from, the 50,000-foot level. He's like, this is the problem with companies that don't have a sustainable business model, basically. They are built on an ad revenue model, so they have to do whatever they can and use whatever data they have, more specifically your personal data, to sell their service to advertisers.
Yeah, if it's free, then you're the product.
He was just saying this is why, we need to pay for products rather than use these, free products that are coming out in the startup craze. The problem is that I don't think there are any real paid Instagram competitors or any real paid Facebook competitors. And I don't think people would they might pay for a service like Instagram, because people do like to take pictures and use cool filters.
There's like Hipstamatic is a paid app where you can download filters and things like that. So, I mean, there are ways you can you don't have the social sharing aspect of it, but there are ways where you can take cool pictures and add effects without having to sell your data to somebody, essentially.
But the reason that things like Instagram and Facebook have taken off, and Twitter, is because they are free services with a social sharing aspect that millions of people are using.
Right.
And so while, yes, I've used Hipstamatic before, and I think Russ even pays, my husband even pays for Hipstamatic, but if you don't have a critical mass on there, then most people are not going to be using the product. Even though people may get enraged about the fact that Instagram or other social services are using their data, I don't think that rage is enough to get them to stop using those services.
Right.
Another free product that is making waves this week is the Tor project. Have you heard about this?
Is that TOR?
It is. It's TOR. And it is a nonprofit that allows anonymous web surfing.
I mean, doesn't Google Chrome, incognito mode or whatever, doesn't that essentially do that for you?
I would think that Google Chrome incognito mode is still serving information back to Google about what you're surfing. I would think that Google Chrome incognito can still be traced to someone.
So tell me about what this system, or tell me about what this Tor program does.
Tor was basically set up to help people who are living in internet-censored countries. So what it does is it makes it virtually impossible for people to trace a data request back to the original user. It routes internet users' data between a series of random volunteer node computers. My understanding is that they install this Tor software on their computer and sign up as a volunteer. So their computer is a node that allows data requests to be pinged off of their computer. So the data request could come from China but be pinged off of your computer here in San Luis Obispo. So you can't trace where the data request is coming from. So
let me get this straight. You volunteer here in the United States to be a part of this as a ping server, a node server. What would you call it? What was that called, Jen?
It's volunteer node computers.
Okay, so you're a node computer, and basically you're a beard for some guy in China who's looking up porn.
And that's really what has become the problem. So earlier this week, some kid here in the U.S. was arrested for having child pornography on his computer. And he said, this isn't my pornography. I am part of this Tor project. I don't know where this data request came from.
It sounds like a really bad idea.
It sounds like a horrible idea.
And I don't know why someone would volunteer for that. I mean...
Well, they're actually encouraging people to set up servers in co-location facilities so that your actual computer isn't going to get confiscated if a questionable data request comes through.
The hard thing about all of this is I can see where in countries where there's a restrictive regime, where this would be so important to protect people who are trying to speak out and improve their nation. But it becomes a shield for child pornography and the like, and it's just horrible how they're something that could be so good, again, could be so awful.
The original intent was to protect freedom of speech and to give people in internet censoring countries a way to access the internet, but now 14% of Tor's traffic connects from the U.S. And it's really the U.S. is their largest user base, and it's becoming a problem.
That's when you got to shut it down. I mean, that's not helpful anymore.
It began in 1996.
Really?
It was a project of the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory. So the original intent was not malicious. It was actually to help with government queries and things like that.
Yeah, because the government never has any malicious intent.
No, absolutely not. It's a whole other podcast. So both the Tor project and Instagram, free services that may or may not be helpful. But a recent report just came out saying that online paywalls, they're actually here to stay.
Who says this? Was this an experts exchange report?
Yeah. It's a new survey from the Alliance for Audited Media. It's specifically talking about media paywalls. So nearly half of all newspapers currently have paywalls on their websites, and more than a fifth of magazines.
Now, are they mostly following the New York Times model?
Yes. So most of these paywalls are following the New York Times model, which is, you get so many clicks on articles for free per month, and then they lock you down after that. But 60% of publishers are currently charging for content on mobile devices.
Yeah, that's one that I've seen a lot where I think that publishers realized that they really screwed themselves when the internet first came around. They were just dumping their content online for free and just hoping to get eyeballs. And when people started using tablets to read things, they're like, let's charge for this.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is smart.
Yeah, it is smart.
Because people are going to start using tablets and mobile devices to read things more and more and more. They already are. So really, you're just not charging people to look at something on a desktop computer.
And it's a great opportunity for content providers to charge for perceived value. I mean, yeah, you could probably read that same article for free in a lot of cases on your computer, but because they've changed the format, they've made it mobile friendly, it's either in an app or it's part of like the newsstand. Now it feels like you're getting additional value. So yeah, sure, I'll pay some sort of subscription fee for that. It's a fantastic opportunity for publishers to get a reasonable financial model underneath them and start building something better.
Yes, absolutely. The same survey found that 44% of publications that don't already have paywalls plan to build them in the future.
And what's fascinating about newspapers specifically is the New York Times, when that paywall was introduced, I mean, it was just laughed at. This is too porous. There's no way this is going to work. We actually wrote a piece about it and said this is going to work. I mean, we called this, did we not?
We really did. And to that point, I think we wrote that piece about a year ago. And a separate study in November found that the number of U.S. daily publications with paywalls has nearly doubled in the past year to more than 300.
I do think, though, that people are going to – I mean, if you're going to have to keep paying for content online, which is not a bad thing, I think that people are going to become much more choosy about the content they consume.
Which is also not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing either, yeah.
I would pay for perhaps the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal.
You wouldn't pay for the Sacramento Bee?
No. My in-laws still get and read the Sacramento Bee
so
every
does my
day.
dad. Yeah, and
every day.
And he reads the whole thing. It's not really worth reading that whole thing, buddy.
It's really not.
The last bit of tech news I want to cover today is the Raspberry Pi. We've talked about the Pi.
I was going to say the Pi is a recurring podcast favorite.
It is. It's a great device. It's a $35 computer. It's this little microcomputer. It's about, really it fits in your hand, the palm of your hand. It's about the size of a credit card in terms of footprint, and it's maybe about, 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall on a little board. And it's a great hobbyist type device that was developed originally to help British school children learn how to code. But there's a whole little hobbyist sub-industry type group that's developed around it. And just this week, they've announced their own app store. So, it makes sense. If you're going to have a cool platform with a unique operating system, you're going to need to have your own little app store. And now Raspberry Pi's got their own.
Nice. What apps are included in this little app store?
Well, there's only 23 titles right now. There's 23 free titles at launch. And they have utilities like LibreOffice, and they have the voiceover IP program Asterisk. So some utilities, some games. It's all open source on the Raspberry Pi. So it's those types of things that they're starting with. But they're encouraging developers to contribute, and developers can charge if they want. There's also a tip jar option if people want to throw some cash towards a developer. But they're really hoping to attract both the hobbyists and commercial content as well. The Raspberry Pi, we actually gave one away here.
We did
a while back.
We've done some demos with it.
And it's cool. Like, a lot of people are using it for media centers, so you can set it up and watch TV on your computer.
It's a really cool concept. I wouldn't have the first clue what to do with it, but I think that it's a really cool concept, and hopefully the App Store will take off and grow, and that more than just British children will learn how to code as a result.
Do you like to eat pie, Jen?
I could go for some pie right now.
You should eat pie while you're in, maybe that would give you some contractions. Maybe mincemeat pie would give you contractions.
Shepherd's pie. Oh.
Well, we're lucky to have our old friend Megan Farrell back in the office with us today. She's going to share a little bit about her recent hike across the Pacific Crest Trail, and we're going to talk a little bit about the charity challenge that we've got going on too. So thanks for joining us today, Megan.
It's my pleasure to be back.
No, Megan, this wasn't just a hike. To say that this was a hike is a bit of an understatement. Right. Tell us what you were doing on the Pacific Crest Trail.
It was probably more like the ultimate life adventure. It was a 5-month hike backpacking trip that went from the border of California and Mexico, starting in Campo, California, up to Canada, the Washington-Canada border. We started hiking April 26th and finished September 24th. We spent 152 days in the wilderness and walked 2,669 miles.
Jeez.
It was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life, one of the roughest adventures of my life.
Now, when you say wilderness, like how wildernessy are we talking here?
It varied a lot. I mean, sometimes it was desert and dirt roads, and every 5 to 7 days we were going into town to resupply on food, wash your clothes, take a shower. Sometimes it was 14 days without a shower, washing your clothes. Oh. But sometimes, like, we would be out for 14 days, no cell phone service, nothing, just hiking out in the wilderness, not even crossing roads. We'd see other PCT hikers sometimes, but we'd go weeks without seeing anybody.
And by we, you mean you and your boyfriend, Chad?
Yep, my boyfriend, Chad, and I went together, and, you know, we are still together, which was, there was a couple close calls. We almost didn't make it, but we didn't kill each other, and we're still talking, so that's good.
You didn't have any of those like Donner Party moments where you're like, I'm really hungry, and I think I'm going to have to eat your arm or something.
There was we would have some starving moments, and then he'd try to catch fish, and then I'd refuse to hike, and there were some poor moments, but we made it through. And
yeah, so how did you get, because you can't take all your food with you, so explain how you got your food.
About half the time we would hitchhike or walk into a town and shop at a grocery store. And then there was probably also 20 other resupply points where Chad's mom was mailing us food that we prepackaged ahead of time. And that was either like a camp alongside the trail you walked a couple miles to, or a podunk town with only a post office. And so we would be, picking up the food we mailed ourselves and eating granola for 150 days, and Chad almost pukes anytime he sees granola. We haven't gone near it with a 10-foot stick. So eating the food was not that delightful, but got us through.
Wow. Okay, so tell me what was the high point of the trip, and then what was the low point? Give me a high point and a low point.
The best part of the trip for me specifically was northern Washington in the Glacier Peak Wilderness. We were in Washington, so we were in shape. We were walking 25 to 30 miles a day with 5,000 to 7,000 feet of elevation change over the day. And so it was hard, but we were in shape. It was beautiful, the trees, the wilderness, the mountains were just unreal. So many glaciers. The northern Washington has as many glaciers as the rest of the U.S. combined. Half of the glaciers are there. So it's beautiful. And we got a 2-person sleeping bag, and that really improved things a lot for us. And it was a lot warmer.
Oh,
it was
the warmth.
really cold.
Oh, okay.
So the northern Washington was definitely my highlight. I think the lowest points were probably kind of heading into the Mojave Desert. It was so hot. There was rattlesnakes and ticks, and you were just so dirty. There was no shade for miles. There was one time where 20 of us were under a bridge, the shade from the one bridge, and spent 8 hours in the middle of the day sleeping because it was too hot to hike, and it was pretty brutal. And then you'd have sunscreen and then sweat, and then a layer of dirt, and then a layer of sunscreen, a layer of sweat, and a layer of dirt. There was no lakes or anything really stagnant horse troughs we were getting our water from, and that was pretty brutal.
So you guys, I presume you obviously had some sort of water purification tools with you.
A lot of people brought filters. We brought Aquamira, which makes chlorine dioxide. So it's an alternative to bleach, and you put it in there, and it makes sure your water doesn't get you sick. But sometimes it sucked. We didn't have filters because the water stayed yellow, even though it was drinkable.
Oh.
Yeah.
So how many people hike this trail on any given year?
It really varies. Like this year was a really desirable year to hike it because we had the best weather that they've had in a very long time, and there wasn't a lot of snow in the Sierras because you're hitting the Sierras early in June. Normally there's a lot of snow, so people need like crampons and ice axes hiking through the snow, but we didn't have much snow at all. So this year about 700 people they estimated started the trail, and probably estimated 300 to 400 finished the trail this year, and other people get injured or they only do a section or they get sick, family emergencies happen, or they get tired of hanging out by themselves on the trail and walking all day every day.
Right.
But like last year probably 400 people started. It was like one of the biggest snow years on record, and probably 130 finished because there was so much snow and the Sierras were just impassable.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people do hitchhike around tough areas and they still finish, but everybody hikes their own hike. Yeah. It's all about the journey, not about walking every step.
So now you were blogging for Experts Exchange. You were keeping up your Experts Exchange blog throughout the hike. So did you have to lug your laptop with you as well?
That was really hard. I actually did a lot of blogs on my cell phone initially, and then sometimes if we were stopping where there was a computer, I'd write them in Notepad as I was going, and then post them up using a computer when I knew we were a day or two out from a stop. But it was really hard because there was sometimes a few weeks where we wouldn't see a computer. And
did you have coverage out there?
Better than I thought, but not all the time. There was periods of coverage, but pretty much all of Washington we didn't have it. All of the Sierras we didn't have it. On and off in the desert and on and off in Northern California and Oregon. So a little bit.
Pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
It's standard, as if you were a T-Mobile customer.
Yeah.
Yes, and which service provider were you using at the time?
We had Verizon. AT&T was better in the desert, but Verizon was better. Other than that, it was Sprint. Not good if you're hiking the PCT.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. This sounds like my worst nightmare, but I applaud you for doing it.
It was nightmarish at times, but overall, I had a great time. It was more fun than I was expecting.
Well, and before you did this adventure, when you were still here at Experts Exchange, you went to Ethiopia when we were doing one of our other Water Wells charity projects before. And right now we're going to do another one of those. So some of the folks who are looking to maybe donate T-shirts for the first time, tell folks a little bit about what you saw when you were in Ethiopia.
Ethiopia was an amazing experience and extremely life-changing. And it's an amazing culture because Ethiopia is the only country in Africa that was never colonized. So they have really strong culture, but it's also very, very poor, and most people live in rural areas. And, we'd be out there and you go visit these villages, and people really have a positive attitude towards life given the circumstances they live in. And one village that we went to that EE recently helped fund a well for, these people were getting water out of a hole in the ground that filled up during the rainy season, and you could see leeches swimming in the hole because the water wasn't flowing. It just fills up when it rains. Algae, it's green, it's mucky. I can't even see anywhere close to the bottom. And everybody in the village lines up and fills up out of that hole. And then, halfway through the year before the rainy season comes again, it runs out of water. So now they're walking 1.5 miles out to this, this other area where there's a lake shared by other people, 3-4 times a day to get water, and they're drinking dirty water. People are getting sick. It's, there was people carrying people for miles to get them to a health clinic because they're sick, and a lot of people just die, and that's why people have more children there because they have to do work. And it was pretty interesting to see how much of a difference just something as simple as water makes in their lives. Children are going to school that are normally fetching water, and people are getting less sick. It's improving their quality of life in so many ways. And for agriculture, it's just crazy. We saw many organizations delivering food aid because it's hard for them to keep crops year round, and it's just amazing how resilient the culture is and how much of a difference something as simple as a water well can make.
And you got to actually visit the villages, or at least one of the villages that had a well that Experts Exchange had built, right?
Yeah, which was so inspiring, and I just can't even explain to you what that feels like to see the efforts of our community here that changed the life for that community. And we walked up and they were chanting and singing and dancing, and they were just so happy to get to show how much they appreciated what was done for them. And they had harvested all this honey from their bees and made all this bread by hand, which, you know, for them, this is like so much of their livelihood, and they just wanted to give it to us to show their appreciation. And everybody, the whole village was there, like welcoming and dancing, and they showed us their old water source, and it was very typical, like cows walking through it, you know, just very dirty. And
I know that the well that we're funding with this most current project that we're doing is right beside the Eider well that we funded last time. So it's cool because this will be the fourth well that we have funded in Ethiopia, and a lot of the projects are close by. So, yeah, the Eider well that we funded in the last charity campaign was just built recently, so we should be getting pictures in from that. And this well that we're funding right now, it'll help about 350 people, I believe. That's how big the village is that this well is going to serve.
And what's amazing about this approach, the organizations we partner with are working with people in Ethiopia on the ground who are out in these villages, assessing the need, doing hydraulic assessments to understand how deep the water is, how much water can be pulled to make it sustainable so that these aquifers are being replenished. And the problem is if you put it in just one village in an area, other villages will start coming to get that water because they want the fresh water, and then that well's getting overused. So what they try to do is find an area and help everybody in that village and get all this whole community taken care of, and then move to the next community. So it's not like they're helping pieces of the puzzle but not completing it, which makes an unsustainable approach. So that's what's very cool. And each community has elders that are in charge of maintaining the well, and the villagers put they all contribute about 10 cents, you know, per week or per month, I forget, to help maintain the well so that this is sustainable for them over time. And there's a key to the well that's open certain hours for people in their village so that it doesn't get used too much, that the aquifer is depleted of the resource, or that villages are coming from around. So taking this approach where you're assisting multiple villages in an area at once has proven to be the most effective way to provide that assistance.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the other thing that I've always loved about Water Run, the organization that we work with, is that 100% of all the proceeds go towards the project. There's no staffing costs funded by the donations. 100% of the proceeds go towards building the well.
I actually was fortunate enough to get to spend some time with Ryan Barisma, who started Water Run, and you know, he has other means of supporting himself and his family, and this is his way of giving back, is by covering the overhead for Water Run so that it's possible for 100% of the contributions, the charitable contributions, go to the wells, and he's even funded wells out of his own pocket.
And Jen, just remind folks how they can participate this time around.
This time around, there are two ways to donate. There is the way that we have been doing for the past 2 or 3 challenges that we've done, where if you are an expert and you have rank T-shirts that are waiting to be redeemed, instead of having them sent to you, you can go into your expert profile and write "redeem for charity" in all the, you know, first and last name fields, the address lines, and we will donate the value of those T-shirts towards funding the well. We need 500 T-shirts donated by the end of January in order to fund the well. And then in addition, the new way that we have implemented this year for people to donate, if you're not an expert on EE but you still want to be involved, you can go to the Water Run website, which is www.waterrun.org, and make a donation. And in the memo field on the donation page, if you write Experts Exchange, then Randy Redberg, the CEO of Experts Exchange, will match 100% of the donations made through January 31st via the Water Run website.
So, Megan, what are you up to now that you're obviously you've been back for a couple months now, but what's next for you?
Yeah, got back on September 24th, looking at going back to nursing school. So I'll be doing my prerequisites at community college part-time, and I'm pretty excited. Got some fun things to do at home.
Well,
And
thanks
it's
for
good to
coming,
be back.
Megan. Yes. It's good to see you.
Thanks for stopping by the podcast to say hi.
It's always fun having Megan back in the office.
Yes.
Stops
she's
by
a
every
fun
once
person.
in a while. Yeah, a lot of fun. I know that a lot of the experts enjoyed getting to meet her when she was on the team. So
She dabbled in moderating, I believe, on the site for a little while.
a moderator dabbler.
Yes.
Well, thank you for tuning into the Experts Exchange Tech News podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Smart Radio. We're also on YouTube now. Did you know that?
I did know that. I like our little YouTube logo.
Yeah, we're kind of experimenting with that right now. Well, if you like what you hear, take a moment to review the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. For more technology news, be sure to visit our blog at blog.experts-exchange.com. You can also get information about the charity drive on the blog as well. I'm Gary.
And I am Jen.
Yeah, you are.
Signing off as not a mother. And when I come back for my next podcast in a few months, I will be Jen signing on as a mother.
Thanks again to everyone for tuning in, and a big thanks to you, Jen, for doing this podcast the last 40 times, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for asking.